Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Live Open Forum. It is week 9, believe it or not. I'm your host, Captain Logan. Thanks a bunch for being with me if you're watching this live, and thanks for watching it after the fact if you're doing that instead. We have done this every single week consecutively for 10 weeks if you count the first show under a different title, and it's really neat that this continues to be a thing that seems viable and worth doing every week, and I'm going to keep doing this each week if we keep having this kind of turnout and we keep getting as many questions as we do. I always feel like I'm not getting enough done in these shows. We get so many questions throughout the thing, trying to hang out with you guys and answer as many things and chat with you guys directly as much as possible. A lot of folks saying hi in the comments. Thanks for being here, everybody. I see Noah O, Thomas Edgehill, Good Old Gamer, Blue Dragon 5, Oscar Stavemeyer. Hi, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks a bunch for jumping in on a Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a little bit before 3 today. I've got something I've got to do immediately after this, so I'm going to have to deck out a few minutes early, and that's why I wanted to jump in a little bit early to give you guys a full hour, but I won't be able to go over it all today. I'll have to leave immediately after our time has officially expired. I sound like a therapist right now. Thanks as always to our chat moderator, Danny Nixon. I want to say this is his 4th or 5th week, I think 5th week moderating the chat, which is insane that he's been cool enough to be here with us every week so far. And since I suggested that we, or since a lot of people asked me to, rather I should say, to bring in a chat moderator, and I suggested it to Danny. He's so cool to offer his time like this, and remember that Danny has also been making an insane amount of artwork and logos for the channel. And so he's been committing a lot of his time and effort to making this as professional and fun and awesome as humanly possible. I owe a lot to Danny, and I cannot say enough great things about him. I'm forever in his debt. So let's go ahead and jump right into the questions, shall we? The first one this week comes from Blue Dragon 5. I'm sorry. The first one comes from Grady Childs, and then we've got one from Blue Dragon 5 right after. Cap, have you played Cuphead yet? I remember on the first one of these, I told you it was on Steam, and you wrote it down. If so, what are your thoughts on it? I'm sorry, I have not had a chance to do that yet. I really want to. I keep meaning to. Was that the first one of these? Has it been that long? So, like 2 months ago, I said I'd play Cuphead, and I haven't gotten to it yet. I mean, I didn't promise a particular time that I would get around to Cuphead. No, I really want to do that, and I just haven't managed to do that yet. I don't play on Steam a lot. I used to more. I used to play, what was it, Meat Boy? I used to play that quite a bit on Steam, and the first AVGN game before it came to Nintendo systems. I wish the second one would come to Nintendo systems. I haven't played that yet either because of that. But yeah, I'll try to remember to download that. I'm going to write it down again and try to talk about it sometime in the near future. But yeah, understand, of course, that my time is pretty limited. We've got a new baby coming here in just a couple months now. We're gearing up for that, and I talk about my regular life stuff as if it's part of channel things and production and stuff. We're gearing up for that. We've got a big series coming soon. It's called Cap and Sarah's Next Child, and I'm working on getting rewinds out, as I'm sure you've noticed, a lot more frequently. I'm making that's always been the bread and butter. I'm treating it like it is. Again, I've been putting that on the back burner because of so many other things people want me to talk about. But of course, that's the main thing people really care about. And I'm not just trying to, pander to the larger audience. Like, I don't want to get burnout and not work on things that I really want to work on, but I honestly miss making that show a priority. I think I was burnt out on it for a while at one time, a few years back, and I just kind of got used to not making those as frequently. And I think I got to where, and I just came up with a lot of other projects, and I wanted to do some different things, and I think what happened was I got to a point where I thought these are so much longer than they used to be. It's impossible to make them at the same, speed and frequency as I did back when they were 10 or 15 minutes. And that is, of course, true. I mean, I can't possibly make them as quickly, but is it possible that I can still get them out regularly and it not take, a couple of months for each one? And now that I'm not doing stills anymore, I've just gotten kind of a second wind and been really excited about trying to see just how quickly I can I can make those things while still keeping them to a quality. And once basically half the work got cut out for me, I said, I really want to challenge myself and see what I can do with this. And so I did an entire, and to be fair, this was not the hardest thing in the world because it's not the deepest and most complex and most sophisticated thing in the world, but I did that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers season overview in a week, about 8 days, start to finish, watching all the episodes, taking notes, and writing and recording the thing. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm excited because it means that, and maybe I shouldn't have made that public knowledge, because if it takes a while to make another one, folks are going to be like, well, you did Power Rangers, you did 60 episodes inside of almost inside of a week. What's wrong with you? Can't you do a movie? And there are, of course, a lot of different factors with your research and times I feel the need to watch the movie, and every one of these is very, very different. But I just wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do it, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it came out well for you guys. But I was pretty happy with it. I had a lot of fun making that, and sometimes you just get in a groove and you get excited, and you can't stop working on a thing. And these days, I'll also tell you, in case this is interesting to anybody, I'm writing rewinds wherever I am now. I used to carve out time and sit down at a keyboard, and I'm writing them on my phone now. I'll work on them when I'm in a doctor's office, or at the library, or if I'm by myself having dinner, I'll finish dinner and then I'll work on it for half an hour wherever I am, and so that makes it a great deal easier too, that I don't have to wait until I'm at my workspace in order to do the thing. And it's harder on a phone. You make more typos and things, and you have to look a little bit closer at it. And so sometimes you'll make mistakes. You'll have no idea because of autocorrect, what in the world it was you wrote. And so while you're recording, you'll say something stupid, and you'll look back at it, and you'll be like, "Wait a minute, what was I even talking about?" And you have to go back into the recesses of your mind and try to remember what in the world it was you were talking about. It's sort of like reading your own bad handwriting, except it's not the handwriting that's bad. It's just autocorrect messes with the language. Blue Dragon 5 asks, what new direction would you like to see Batman go in, storytelling or character-wise? You just mean in general, just like in comics or just wherever we happen to tell a Batman story? I don't know. I'm pretty happy with what Tom King is doing right now. We're back to something that looks a little bit closer to my Batman. I think we've got a real human Batman right now, and it's still, dissecting the psychology a lot. And there's, I guess you could say, there's a little bit of deconstruction going on, but it's not in the same way Snyder did it, and that we've seen with a lot of Batman writers, where we're kind of just, and I've talked about this a lot, but we're kind of just on the page, like analyzing ourselves. I don't think that's what King is doing, but I think it is that real modern kind of introspective kind of writing. I like that we've sort of blended those things. And, that's not to say that Batman hasn't very often going, quite a ways back, been about dissecting that, been about his psychology. But I guess it just looks more deliberate and upfront these days, because everybody has their idea of what Batman should be, and it is such a fascinating psychology that it's and we've just dealt with it in so many different ways that it's difficult to sit down and write Batman and just tell a story and not try to make it a little bit deeper and a little bit more sometimes kind of ethereal, and you step back and you kind of look at Batman as the idea and not just the man, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. So I say all that to say I really like what Tom King is doing. I would like to see a Batman run again, and it doesn't have to be the main run. It could just be some other Batman book that we're doing. And I guess Detective maybe sort of has this to some degree, but I'd like to see a more understated Batman. And again, like, because I don't want to get in trouble when I say this with Tom King fans, because don't get me wrong, I love what he's doing. And it is, like I said, a real human Batman, and it's about, and it gets very intimate. But I would just love to see a Batman run, maybe even, a shorter, just 12-issue run that's just telling a detective story, and it's real understated, and maybe there are some larger themes and ideas at play, but we don't focus on them so much, and they're kind of just in the background, and we can read all of that into it. And I kind of feel like it's been a while since we've had at least a great Batman run that was just Batman going and solving a case. And so I would like to see more of that kind of thing. Kelly Jones, have you ever heard of The Death of Superman Lives? what happened. It's a brilliant documentary done by super geek John Schnepp. Yeah, I know about it, of course. I was really excited about that when it came out. I still have not gotten around to watching it. When it came out, it wasn't available to get a physical copy right away, if memory serves. And I usually like to buy physical copies before I watch stuff. If it's available for rental and for digital rental and it's at a reasonable price, I'll go ahead and do that. But when that came out, again, I'm working on memory. I think I'm right about this. What I remember is when that came out, it was like $10 or $20, maybe it was even as much as 20. I can't remember, for a digital purchase. And I just don't buy my stuff that way. So I don't want to spend $20 and then wait around for it to finally come out as a physical copy and then have to buy it again, because I'm never going to use that digital copy again. So I basically spent that much money to rent it. And the very same thing happened to me. The only thing I've ever done this with is Batman versus Superman, the director's cut, because, or the ultimate cut, I guess, is what it was called, because Rasco and I wanted to do a blind commentary on that. And a lot of people hated that and wished we hadn't done it. And it maybe wasn't the best idea at the time, but that's what we decided to do with it. And we really wanted to do that week one when it came out, and so I bought it that way. And because of that, I don't actually own the ultimate cut yet, because since they're different versions and in some ways quite different, although not structurally like we were initially led to believe, I do need to own both of those copies for my collection. So in case you haven't heard me talk about this before, there's my collection behind me. It's a little bit disorderly, as you can tell at the moment, because I've been shuffling things around and adding things, and I got some new stuff recently, but that's part of it. The rest of it's over there. Is the TV stuff's over there. But anyway, the way I buy superhero movies, and I also buy every movie based on a comic book, is I don't have to have every release of it, but I like to try to get every special feature that's released, if at all possible. So if there's another version that's released, or if there's another release, I should say, with more special features, I'll go ahead and buy that even if I already have the movie. But if there are different versions of the movie, like different cuts, I do feel the need to own all of those. And I haven't done that with BVS yet because I bought that digital copy, and I can watch it if I feel the need to do that. But I will at some point also own the physical copy of that. So anyway, that's all neither here nor there. I just thought that might be interesting to someone. But anyway, I will, of course, watch that documentary. And I haven't watched the one on Roger Corman's Fantastic Four yet either. And I also need to do that, which I've heard good things about. Solar Dragon 007, are you excited for the new Spider-Man game on PS4? Yeah, naturally. I'm really stoked about that. I heard we were supposed to get the release date today. And if that's out already, maybe somebody in the comments can let me know and tell me what it is. Somebody sent me a message yesterday and was like, tomorrow we get the release date. It's like how trailers, and I'm not making fun of the person who sent me this, but it's like these days, it's news that you're going to get news. And I just think that's really funny. Like, why would you as a company announce when you're going to announce something? I don't understand that. Like, just put it out that day. I don't get it. I don't know what that gives you. Like, are you getting more? Maybe this happens. Maybe you're getting more clicks on trailers and on blogs and things, although those, unless for some reason you care about, I'm just spitballing, unless for some reason you really care about a press release getting a whole lot of views, which I don't know what that really gives you, besides just, people know about this, but they're going to find out through other avenues anyway. I don't really know what the point is of giving us that early, that you're going to have news. Tomorrow, news. Tell your friends. Good old gamer. Cap, what's the weirdest thing you ever bought on Amazon? I saw some Japanese Kit Kats on there, and it made me curious. On Amazon, I don't know that I bought anything really strange on Amazon. I mean, I bought, I guess, weirder things on eBay. Like I bought some custom figures and things like that, a couple here and there, and just old collectibles and stuff. But I don't have a great answer. I'm trying to think of anything specifically on Amazon that was weird that I bought. I don't think I bought anything even really foreign or imported on Amazon, with the exception of the 60s Batman mask that I'm using on Batman Year, which I know I'm behind on. I've been front-loading Rewind now, and so something had to kind of take a hit for a minute, and that's that. And I'm getting into a groove, so don't worry, folks. That is coming back, and I will do my level best to catch up on it. But there's just only so much time of the day. So anyway, But that was okay. So the mask that comes with the rubies costume Adam West Batman suit, which that one was not a custom job, as I'm sure most everybody can tell. It is a glorified Halloween costume, but it's a really good one. Everything about it is really good, except for the silly booty things that you always get with costumes like that. And I'm not shooting my feet, so it doesn't really matter. But I would like eventually to maybe get some custom, light blue Adam West Batman boots. But like everything else about the costume is pretty good. But the mask is terrible. It's pretty abhorrent. So I had to order a better mask, and I really like the one I've got. And that, I think, came from China, Japan. I'm honestly not sure where that came from. But anyway, so that's, I think, the only foreign thing I've bought on Amazon. So yeah, I just don't have a great answer for that. Tanner P, what Star Wars spin-offs? Oh, and I think I know who this is. I think this is my buddy Tanner, who's been watching this for a long time, and I've been to his house. I think that's who this is, and if that's true, that's the guy that I was just mentioning. Sent me that note yesterday about getting the release date, about the news. But it's possible that it's someone else with that someone else named Tanner. What Star Wars spinoffs would you want to see? So yeah. The big one, I'm surprised, hasn't been announced, unless it has and I'm wrong, or it was mentioned at one point and people just aren't talking about it now. I thought early on there was a lot of talk about Boba Fett. I haven't heard anything about that in a long time, and it just seems like that would be one of, like, way before Han Solo. And maybe Boba Fett is in that movie. I don't even know. I just thought of that. Like, I actually would be a little bit surprised if he doesn't make some appearance in that. Maybe he'll be sort of like Vader was in Rogue One, where he is there, but he's not the main antagonist. I'm really baffled that we didn't front load that, because that's a character that so many Star Wars fans from old EU are just in love with, and it's their favorite Star Wars character. And he, of course, got nothing to do in the original trilogy. And we built so much stuff in the prequels around Jango Fett. So yeah, that would be the big one. And not even that I'm a huge Boba Fett fan. It's just people like Dan Torrey. I know so many people that are in love with Boba Fett, and I don't know what they're talking about, because I know him as a costume and a cool look. And if he's got a more interesting character, I'd like to get to see it. And I guess I can go back, of course, and read some EU stuff. And I keep meaning to do that. And I talked about that some last week when somebody asked me if I wanted to get more into old EU, and I do. But I don't know anything about that character. So it would be really, really nice to get a movie. This is maybe the obvious answer for me at this point. I love the first volume of Star Wars Legacy so much, and I would love to see that realized in some way. And where we're going with the continuity now, it seems like it would be weird to make that the future of this universe now. Like, I just don't know if you could even, I don't know what exactly you could do with it. It seems like it would just be a totally different thing. But if I don't know, if you rolled time backwards and we were doing the current continuity a little bit differently, it would be really cool to go to the future and see that. I would, and of course, people keep talking about Knights of the Old Republic, and I would see that too. I mean, I think it would be really cool to just flesh this world out more, go way, way, way back, do the kind of dark ages of Star Wars, do kind of Star Wars antiquity even, and then go way forward and do Star Wars Beyond. I'd love to see different time periods too. What else? The Ponderer. Hey, Cap, have you made any headway with Power Rangers RPM since the commentary a few months back? I haven't. I need to watch that. I've always wanted to. Like I've mentioned before, I like what I've seen of that show, but I don't know when I'll look at it. I was kind of waiting, to be honest with you, for my son to catch up to get to it, and then I'll probably try to watch some of that with him as he's watching through it. He is currently on Jungle Fury, so he's not that far away. So now that I'm thinking about it, it's just been a while since I thought about this. Now that I'm thinking about it, that could happen actually sometime soon, and then if I watch quite a bit of that show, I'll talk about it a little bit on the Omnibus. I'm kind of waiting to see how well the season 1 overview for Mighty Morphin goes before I decide if I'm going to do any more of those, or if I'm going to do them, very soon. I mean, like, if months, years down the road, I haven't done another one of those and I just feel like doing it, I might make that the next one at some point. But if there is a whole lot of interest, if that does really well in the first couple of days, it's done great. So like if that does really well, I might consider trying to do seasons 2 and 3 inside of a year or two, as opposed to doing a whole lot of other things in front of it. Somebody left a comment and was like, well, Cap, you do realize that you're going to get a lot more requests for whole seasons for Rewind after this, right? And yeah, I'm certainly expecting that. And there's a lot of stuff that I would like to do. And if I can keep Rewind going, and of course, I will have spots where I'll need to, take a couple, 3 weeks off or whatever. But if overall I can keep them coming out regularly, and you notice I'm being very ambiguous about what I mean by that, because I don't want to promise anything. I'm just trying to do it and hope that I can hold to it and not make promises I can't keep. But if I can keep them coming out regularly, then eventually we're going to run out of a lot of the big stuff. There's only 52 weeks in a year, and we only have. I mean, there are a ton of superhero movies, and we're putting more out every year, obviously. But eventually, I'm gonna run out of a lot of the major stuff, and so I'm trying to make sure that I also get some of the weirder, kind of more obscure, kind of lesser known, and kind of just crappy nobody cares about, or nobody liked, but maybe would be interesting to talk about movies out of the way. And yeah, I'm going to talk about a lot of things that won't be all that interesting to talk about because I'm a completionist, and I said I would review all of them. But the point I'm trying to make is, to continue to extend it, if there remains the kind of interest there is in Superhero Rewind, I would like to start doing more TV stuff, and that beefs it up, and that gives us a variety, and it lets me talk about serialized storytelling in a way that I don't get to as much with movies, although the way in which the Marvel movies have been serialized is an interesting thing, and I keep having to bring that up. Age of Ultron is next. I'm working on that. I want to say as we speak, but obviously not right now, because I'm not that great of a multitasker. It would be difficult for me to watch the movie or special features right now and take notes, which while I'm talking to you, I would if I could, if I could. Well, I was going to say if I could clone myself, I would. But if you've seen Spawn Year and Batman Year, that's like a really terrible idea. And kind of the main point of those shows is just don't clone yourself. It's just, I know that's a really specific moral that doesn't apply to a lot of us, but that's pretty much what those shows are about, is just don't clone yourself. And I don't usually like to tell people what my writing is about, but it's so obvious in your face. I feel like the need to come out and say that. But yeah, so that's the stage I'm at right now on Age of Ultron is note taking. But what I was going to say about that is it's really nice that I just did Iron Man 3 a couple weeks ago, and so I've got that fresh in my mind. And Tony Stark's arc in going through Age of Ultron is built so much on that. But it's also interesting to talk, and again, I haven't started writing yet, so I don't know what's going to come out of my fingers. But it's maybe going to be interesting to decide whether or not that really is the next logical step. Was the next logical step for him? I tend to think that it is. I don't know if I will continue to think that as I'm noodling it out, because as I always say, I don't really know what I think about something until I start writing about it. Hamza, what do you think is Stan Lee's best origin story? That's an excellent question. It's gotta be Spider-Man, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of anything that's better than that. And for the longest time, I didn't think Spider-Man's origin was really, worth dramatizing. I thought that it was just a, kind of throwaway way to get the ball rolling kind of story, until I started reviewing Spider-Man comics and saw the way it was handled in Amazing Spider-Man, which I still maintain is a really excellent adaptation of just the origin. Never mind how I might feel about the larger villain plot in that movie, or the way the parents' backstory is handled and all of that. But yeah, I really like Spider-Man's backstory, and I think it's I think it's just so essential to understanding that character, and it's and like a lot of other Stan Lee backstories do seem to kind of just be things to get the ball rolling. Like Fantastic Four, I guess you could make interesting, but it's not as character driven. It's not as much about, because with Spider-Man it's about a kid. It's of course a coming of age story. It's about a kid who is just kind of all about himself, initially, like most kids are, and he he learns that lesson of responsibility, and that makes him a hero. For a lot of other superheroes, it's just I got powers, and then people needed help, and I realized that I needed to go be responsible and save them, and that's why I like the and that's sort of kind of what Fantastic Four is. I think with that one. See, I want to say that could get really interesting. It's just it was like a couple page, and Spider-Man's was too. It's just there's a lot to do with it. But with Fantastic Four is it's almost like a horror story that turns into an optimistic thing. So like imagining that happening to you is absolutely horrifying. And then they end up being the most lighthearted superheroes in the Marvel Universe. I really like that. They take this negative and they turn it into a positive. I think Doctor Strange origin is also really interesting and is like half a page, and it's not the same thing in the movie. I think it could have been more interesting in hindsight had we not already done similar things with Tony Stark, because it might have been too much of a repeat. And I've talked about all these things before, but I think I have to go with the obvious answer. I think it is Spider-Man. Visler Turlo, what do you think of Wesley Crusher being or becoming a traveler in TNG? I'm currently reading the Cold Equations book trilogy, and I'm finding it a bit odd. Yeah. So in TNG, if you don't know what he's talking about, we end up paying off the Traveler idea from the first season, where the Traveler shows up, and I think it's Where No One Has Gone Before, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's not that episode. And he I think that's it. Anyway, where the Traveler shows up and tells Wesley Crusher that he has already achieved this almost like sense of enlightenment or something that human beings never had before, that he's starting to realize the full potential of human beings, and that he can some kind of like ethereal gobbledygook philosophy that almost transcends science fiction and turns into something more fantastic, that he can see past the physical and past the subatomic, and he can kind of transcend reality and mold things with his mind, and he sees into like the 27th dimension or whatever. And then eventually the Traveler shows back up in 7th season and takes Wesley Crusher with him, and he's kind of transcended onto another plane of existence. I never liked that. I never bought into that. It was bad enough that Wesley Crusher had to be so much of a wonder child that he would just kind of become a plot device, where if we didn't know how to get ourselves out of an episode, he would just solve everything with look, I'm a genius. And I think it could have been that idea maybe could have been more interesting than it was, but we never did enough with it, which was the case with a lot of character stuff with TNG, unfortunately. And then he's such a jerk face in that episode that I really don't care that he's transcending into another plane of existence, because I kind of just hate him at that point. But I do wish we had maybe brought him back in a movie and fleshed that out a little bit, and I don't know, maybe played with that idea more, although we could have just been adding insult to injury at that point, especially because I didn't have a lot of faith in the writers and producers making the somebody just said shut up, Wesley, making the TNG movies at that point. So yeah, I honestly never really cared for it. I've read the first Cold Equations book. It's wonderful. I haven't read past that, and I don't remember Traveler Wesley Crusher being in that. So he must be in the next one. I think that's a 2 or 3 book series. Maybe it's even 4. I think I think it's 3. And I bought it is because I somewhat recently bought the rest of them, but I haven't gotten to it yet. If you're a TNG fan, I really recommend that first Cold Equations book. It's about, hopefully I'm not giving too much away by telling you this, but this is kind of the selling point. It's about Noonien Sung, the creator of Data, and how he put his consciousness into a Soong-type android when he died and isn't actually dead. And it's about his adventures as a Soong-type android after his alleged passing. And I think that's a really great idea and seems like exactly what he would do. It's so it's so in that character. That's so Soong. I love that. And he and I love that it builds on the Ira Graves thing from Schizoid Man, that like if Graves could do it, well, of course Sung could do it, and of course he would, and I love that, and that's the thing I wish we had maybe done in a movie. In Nemesis, Wesley Crusher was originally in that, had a cameo. It was cut out. You see it in the deleted scenes, and there's no. That's the only time after that on screen that we saw him, and it's silly because he doesn't. There's no talk about it. He's just there, and he's wearing a Starfleet uniform. Like if he had just been there wearing like street clothes or some kind of weird traveler thing. I mean, hopefully not that like super ugly like flesh tone schmuck thing, but or gray schmuck or whatever it was. I forget which is which with different characters wearing street clothes in TNG, but they all were just atrociously colored, and they were these one-piece kind of onesies, and they looked awful, and some of them were kind of flesh colored, like the Bajoran uniforms, and some of them were gray. And anyway, so yeah, I mean, hopefully he wouldn't have been wearing that, but he was wearing just a regular uniform. And I'm like, you're not even in Starfleet anymore. Why are you wearing this? Oscar Stavemeyer, which Marvel DC characters would you like to see get their own movie, TV show, or animated series? I mean, yeah, I get this question a lot, and at this point, it's hard to think of them because there are so many, because we just already made this with so many different characters. So this time, I'm gonna go with what might sort of sound like an obvious answer, and but kind of isn't. We've got 2 shows in the Superman mythology on TV right now, and we have a third one apparently in the works. We'll see if that actually gets off the ground, although lately the track record for these things has been pretty good. Usually things that get announced end up getting made. It's not like the old days of the CW when you had things like Grayson and like Amazon, which was supposed to be a Wonder Woman show and stuff like that. Most of these things end up getting made. We never saw that Booster Gold show that I think was supposed to be Sci-Fi or something. I forget who was supposed to have that. So there are exceptions, but most things get made. Anyway, so it was supposed to be, I'm getting ahead of myself. So there's supposed to be a Metropolis show in development by the folks that are making Gotham. That would be 3. How about a Superman show? How about a show starring Superman? That'd be cool. It's been a long time since we've done that. And yeah, we had Smallville, and that ended like 7 years ago now, which is mind-boggling to me that it's been that long. I guess, yeah, 6-7 years ago, 2011. And then, but of course he sort of puts on a Superman suit at the end of that, and it's starring Clark Kent. But I mean, it's been since Lois and Clark since we actually had a show with, starring Superman, and considering like actually, as Superman and anything like a regular Superman status quo. And I don't know, I just think it would be interesting to see. It's not a thing I need by any stretch of the imagination, but considering that at least right now, movie Superman's not popular. He doesn't seem to even really hold the Superman ideal up. We're constantly told in those movies that he does. Justice League gets the closest, where at least everybody talks about him like he is the optimistic, idealistic ideal of Superman, but he still doesn't really exhibit that as good as I think Henry Cavill is. It would be cool to then to see it in TV, since we're not getting it there. And I felt that way with Supergirl, and I really liked what is it? Hulkman. I liked his Superman a lot. Maybe give him a show, or even do another show that's not at all related to any of the other Superman stuff that's on TV right now. But yeah, it would be nice to get back to basics with Superman. That's my answer right now. That's the one I'd most like to see. Mario 500 now. Captain, have you ever been interested in newspaper cartoons? If not, would you consider viewing them? Reading them, I guess. Yeah, I've never been a big strip guy. When I was a kid, I used to read Far Side a little bit, and I was never a Calvin and Hobbes guy. I had a lot of friends that were. I liked Snoopy whenever I read it. Naturally, Peanuts, but yeah, never been a big. And Garfield was funny, I guess. But yeah, was never a big strip guy. I always preferred just reading comic books and getting a full story, and like I was never a fan of them. You know what I mean? Like I would read them and laugh at them, and they were fun. But I never really thought about them afterwards. You know, like there are a lot of people that are big into comic strips the way I am in comic books, which is great. And there's a whole you know, kind of fan community for that, I guess. But yeah, I've never really given a second thought much after I've read a strip. And I mean, like obviously, that as an art form is really impressive because you have to, especially with, you know, like 3-4 panel joke scripts and especially, you know, 1 panel ones, but like when there's like a setup payoff and just like a story structure that's just like, what is the situation and then what's the joke and what's the payoff, like that's very difficult to do. And I will say that as much as I'm not really a fan of those, I did write one for about a year at one time, and I haven't thought about this in a long time, but my wife and I wrote a newspaper strip for our for KU back when at the University of Kansas, back when we were in college. We had a regularly published strip, and it was called Random Thoughts. And it was mostly geeky stuff, but we did all kinds of just, you know, quick 3-panel gags. And I remember one of them that I'm sure nobody got. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea at the time. Who Wants to Be a Superhero was on. I just reviewed that a few months ago on the Superhero Rewind, and I did a strip that was making fun of that show, and it was Stan Lee with the superhero contestants on the blocks, but it was a supervillain show instead of a superhero show. And in that show, Stan Lee would always say superheroes superheroes don't kill people, they help people. Because in the first season, you had a guy named Iron Enforcer, which I always thought that guy was a plant and wasn't actually a contestant they cast. And he was always going around with this big fake gun, talking about how you know, he wanted to kill bad guys. And Stan Lee says superheroes don't kill people, they save people. So I reversed it, and I had a villainous character, I can't remember his name, who gets booted off the show, has to turn in his costume because he saves someone instead of kills people. And Stan Lee says supervillains don't help people, they kill people. Danny Nixon. I'm sorry, Danny Nixon. Okay. So sometimes I do this. I look at Danny's messages to me, and I read his name because the thing after it sometimes doesn't sound like it's the name of a viewer. Anyway. The Next Generation. Will you ever do a rewind live? I gotta tell you, I've considered it. I don't know what the point would be, except just folks getting to hear me record it in the first place. If I did it, and I thought about even making that like a Patreon perk or something where you can, you know, listen to my, to my, you know, initial recording, to my delivery before I edit it. I don't know what the point of that is. I don't know if anybody would actually enjoy that or find that interesting. That seems like maybe a waste of time for people, because as you can probably tell sometimes in just listening to that show, it's heavily edited, because they get long. And in the early days, I did them all in one take, and I hardly had to edit them. And you can tell, because there are places where I flub up and I don't fix it. I fix all of that now. And so sometimes I'll do multiple takes for certain lines. I'll say a line, I don't like the way I read it, or it's a long sentence and I forgot where I was going when I wrote it. So, you know, sometimes you'll start reading a sentence and you'll think it's a question, and then it turns out not to be a question, or vice versa. It turns out that it is a question. Like, I didn't read this right, or I don't like a statement. So I have to edit that a lot. And yeah, I don't know that there would be really any interest to people doing that. If I did one live, I would rehearse it first, and I would do my level I would read it like a speech, and I would try not to make any mistakes at all. And then that probably still wouldn't be the version that I ended up posting, you know, as the real version. But that's interesting. If I get more requests for it, I'll consider doing it with maybe, you know, a major movie that people really want to see. But let me know if that's something you want. It was an idea I had at one time, and I'm surprised somebody else is bringing it up, because I couldn't imagine what would be interesting about that for people. That was Geek Next Generation. Okay, Jason asked that question. Well, that's why. It was my son. Danny, do we have that few questions right now that Jason had to ask? No, I mean, I guess Jason's upstairs watching the show right now, so he has every right to ask a question as anybody else. But that explains why that question got asked. But let me know if you think that Jason's idea is an interesting one. And I'm sorry for spending as much time on that as I did. What else? Reptile Dude 21. What is your favorite Batman pop vinyl? I recently picked up the Surf's Up Batman one. Yeah, I've got that one. You can see my pop vinyls in the background. It's all Batman. I mentioned this before. The way I do the pop vinyl collecting, and there's probably one or two out right now that I'm missing, although I'm pretty well caught up. But besides, really hard to get one like the, Abensur one, Zernar. Excuse me, I always do that. The Zernar one is still like $150. I don't know if I'll ever get that. But anyway, I collect Batmans and Batgirls and pretty much anything that is related to Batman in DC that has Batman ears. And the only exception to that is Bruce Wayne's that don't have a bat cowl but have a bat suit. That's still, of course, a Batman. But my favorite right now, I'll go grab it. I'll grab a couple, actually. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. So one of my favorites right now is the Bombshell Batwoman. She's hilarious because she's a Batwoman, like it's a pun because she's a baseball player, and I just think she's rad looking, and I love the color scheme a lot. And some of that's just the design of that character, but I think they did a wonderful job realizing that as a pop figure, and I love the hat. I just love the baseball hat with this. Somebody should cosplay this. This is so cool. I would really love to see somebody try to pull this off at a con. And then what else? So recently, and I maybe showed this off. Let me see if I can find the other one. There it is. I think I recently showed these guys off. Sorry about that. On New Acquisitions. But so this was a Hard Act Batman, which is a crazy deep pull from animated series, and so he was a robot that was that was supposed to replace Batman, and he gets beaten up by Batman, and he gets half of his face ripped off, and then they did a variant one where they did the whole face. And I couldn't believe that existed, and so that was an exclusive from somewhere, and Vince actually found me that. And but that was like that was a little bit more expensive. I think that was like a $25 one, and I've not ever paid, I think, more than 30 or 35 for a pop figure. And my rule on these, because I mean I buy so many of them, and they get expensive, and it's ridiculous how many I own now. My rule of thumb with these is I buy them in person, so I never order one. I always get them out in the wild, and it's kind of a fun hunt. And even though I could order a lot of them, it's kind of fun to only buy them when I find them. And I have found a bunch that way that I probably maybe would have never even known about had I not done that. But anyway, those are some of my favorites. McCaffrey, have you ever read Irredeemable by Mark Waid? No, I have not. I don't know anything about that book. So that is my answer to that. Let me know if you think I should and if it's worth reading. I generally tend to like Mark Waid. I'm going to answer another question that I'm just yes. I know, isn't it nuts? There's a Hard Act Batman pop. Madman, what ticks you off about the Tick? That's a funny question. Just like the character himself, or things that have been done with him, or I mean, obviously. The thing that ticked me off most about the Tick back in the early 2000s was that Fox didn't give that show enough of a chance, and it only got 8 episodes and a 9th that was never aired. But we've obviously kind of redeemed ourselves with that now, thanks to Amazon, and they're giving a superior Tick show a chance. I really like the Patrick Warburton show, but it's a whole other kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. The Tick doesn't annoy me. I think maybe if I hung out with the Tick, there are things that he does that might grate on me, but I don't know. I have a lot in common with the Tick. I think that our sense of humor is somewhat similar, and then I can be kind of over the top and quirky and weird like the Tick, and so I don't know. Maybe we would get along, or maybe he would just remind me too much of myself. I don't know. Obviously, I'm a little bit more coherent than the Tick, and I remember my past and things like that. I don't have as much in common with the Tick as I think Tommy Wiseau does, but I think sometimes I get where the Tick is coming from. I get the cut of his jib. Professor Zoom 21, hi Cap, hi. Have you seen Suicide Squad Hell to Pay? If so, I'd like to hear your opinion. No, not yet. I don't think that is released on physical copy yet, and I've been seeing reviews pop up on YouTube already, and as I always say with the direct-to-video animated movies, Eric and I don't review them until they come out physically, because I always buy a physical copy, and that harkens back to what I mentioned, what I was talking about earlier with documentaries, that I don't tend to watch things until they come out physically. It is 3:37 on the dot here. And that means we have about 12 or 13 minutes left, folks. So I'm going to get to as many more questions as humanly possible. Thanks a bunch for being here once again. You guys are wonderful, and I always look forward to this. This is so much. This is such a treat every week, and I still can't believe that it has remained viable and made sense to do this on a weekly basis. Most other things we do twice a month, and I was really afraid that this would be overkill and people would get really sick of listening to me ramble on, and I hope that it is not a horribly pretentious or full of myself kind of thing that I do every week. And I really want you guys to know that it's just because of the interest in it, and that I hear from people every week who are disappointed that they didn't get their question answered, or that they weren't able to make it to the show to ask their question. And it just means a lot to you, to me, that you guys care so much to hear what I have to say in general, but just spend an hour with me a week. It's really cool. I think this has been a really nice compromise in bringing something live back. Romello Malone, do you buy the rumors about Venom having the least screen time in Sony's Venom film? I hadn't heard that. I hope, obviously, that is not the case. That would be a giant disaster for them, because two things. A, one of the big complaints, besides just characterization and goofy story stuff and all of that in Spider-Man 3, was that their Venom design looked wonderful, and he was hardly on screen. We didn't see the Venom face very much, but the other to do that again would be absolutely insane. I mean, I think a lot of what will get people to watch this film that are old enough to remember Spider-Man 3. I just want to take a second and pause and think about the insanity of that question, or excuse me, of that statement, that we are far enough away now that there are people that will go see Venom that don't remember when the Spider-Man 3 was out. Maybe they've seen it now, but that's insane. Anyway, but I think that's a chance to redeem that. There's going to be people that will go see that movie just to finally see Venom face for more than 6 seconds. So if that's the case, they're idiots, right? And if they didn't want to throw the money at it to make their Venom look great, or to make sure that he's on screen long enough, then that's not the movie to make. And that's certainly not the movie to lead with. I mean, that obviously would require a big special effects budget. And I don't know how much money that movie is costing to make. I've not been following the production closely. Besides, I saw the trailer, and I just articles people have sent me. But it seems to me that if you're going to make a Venom movie, it's going to be real special effects heavy, and you want to make sure that looks great, and that you give it its due, and that you do enough with it. That doesn't mean that Eddie Brock has to be in the Venom costume the entire time. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even mean that he has to start with it, but that's almost certainly, it's pretty obviously an origin movie. You'd hate for him to get it in the third act, like he does in Spider-Man 3, and then wear it for 10 minutes and then lose it, or just the movie's over. And if it's true that Carnage is in that movie, then you're obviously going to have even more special effects you have to deal with, and your visual effects. You're gonna see a lot of symbiote stuff, and so it would be ridiculous if that rumor ended up being true. So hopefully not. And the other thing I was going to say is, then you have completely screwed yourself moving forward for your shared Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man. Jason's still asking me questions. No, Jason, we do still do Geeks Not Nerds. Geeks Not Nerds doesn't need to be brought back. Don't confuse people with your questions. We do that on the we do that on the omnibus still. Anyway. But yeah, so they're trying to do Silver and Black, and they've got other things they're talking about in the pipeline. It would be a huge disaster for them moving forward if their Venom wasn't enough in their Venom movie. And I'm also curious to see how well Into the Spider-Verse ends up doing for them, because I think Venom is likely to get buried. I've said that a lot. I think that movie is going to have to work overtime to even get noticed, and I think they should not have put a teaser out until they had a good look of the suit. And yeah, maybe their strategy is hold back and not show it too much. But I don't think that's how you sell that movie in the midst of, like, when we see full on Thanos. I just don't think that's how you sell that movie. That's my first reaction to that. Anyway, Scott McCall, Black Panther's total at the domestic box office hit $652.5 million this past weekend. Right, it had a Jurassic World, became the number 4 movie of all time. Thoughts? Yeah, that's wild. That's insane. I could never have imagined that. I knew that movie was going to be popular for some obvious and some not so obvious reasons. I thought it just looked so slick and stylized, and unlike anything we'd really seen before. I think it obviously has a lot to do with social stuff. It's really exciting for people to have to have a superhero that is of a minority that is in such a good movie. I mean, I think that is a lot of it for people. But it's also just a really darn good movie. And I mean, Iron Man was huge. I feel like Black Panther is kind of Iron Man again, in that even though it's in that same universe, and there are things it has in common with other superheroes, it's in a league of its own. It's a whole other thing. I've said this before, but it's really impressive to me that ends up being a decently kid-friendly movie. It's a pretty family-friendly movie. I mean, I took my kids; they loved it. My kids are in love with Black Panther, but it does stuff that a lot of people thought you never could with a Marvel movie, and that's why we have the Netflix shows. That it gets the fact that it's allowed to get as dark and heavy as it does, while still having that sense of optimism and that sense of fun. It's brilliant. It deserves it. I want to think that a lot of the movie's success has as much to do with its quality as it does with social consciousness, but it deserves it for that too, for being such a good movie and doing something that we just haven't had enough of. We don't have enough great black superheroes, and or rather, we have some, and they just didn't go to screen before. And I've said this before. There are a couple characters. There are a couple of black superheroes that I love that we haven't had a good treatment for yet, and I never expected it with Black Panther. I didn't think he would be the first of them, and that's just it's wonderful. I've always said that somebody needs to take another crack at Steel, although I want Steel to be in a Superman movie first, because he needs to be inspired. I don't know how you make Steel without the Steel being inspired by Superman. I don't know how it's even that character if you don't do that. But anyway, yeah, silver and black is the most random pairing, is it not? It's weird. 6 more minutes, guys. Aiden Walsh, question, answer. Do you think Infinity War or its Fallout movies will reset the universe to any degree to better merge the X-Men and FF into the MCU? I hadn't thought of that. It is possible that whatever they do with the cosmic aspect of Infinity War could just naturally lead them to something that would make more sense in bringing FF and X-Men in. I doubt it would. If they do that, I doubt it would be intentional. I think it might just be a happy accident. And Marvel's had a lot of those, and they've almost always been really careful to make sure not to waste opportunities. So if there's just something in the mythology that says, okay, like we've opened the world up, or we've changed things. I mean, I don't expect a reboot, or certainly not. Again, especially like with the success of Black Panther and how we keep building and Spider-Man. Like, we're not going to do any kind of soft reboot thing or anything like that. But if they kind of open the multiverse up at all, even talking about certain things in that movie, and I don't think they need it. After Doctor Strange, like, you don't really need to do that. But I think it's possible that they just peel the curtain back farther and farther with the cosmic stuff, and that would naturally make it easier for them to put that stuff in there. As Infinity War started being made, the Fox merger idea, I don't think was even tenable yet. I mean, like, I think they're. What I read is that they have been talking about it for a really long time, and behind closed doors, and then finally they opened the doors. But now there's antitrust questions, and so we still don't know for sure if that's going to go through. But I still say it probably will. But I I doubt very seriously if that ends up happening, if they intend it. Lucas Green, what is your favorite Batman gadget? Favorite Batman gadget in the in 60s Batman, it's, I'm thinking, because there's a lot of really cool ones, right? It's got to be the parachute out the back of the Batmobile that stops the Batmobile with the Batmobile pickup service. I think that's hilarious. I'm also a big fan of the Bat radio. I'm forgetting the name of it, the transmitter. But that's more because of that scene in the 60s Batman movie in a line of dialogue. Confound it, the batteries are dead. But I have one of those. It's wonderful. I love it. There's a lot of really cool grapplers that are great in other Batman things. I'm trying to think outside of that in other Batman stuff. Just, you know, my favorite Batman gadget. I like Batman gliders a lot. I like it when you know, basically doing the Batman Beyond thing before Batman Beyond, where Batman has a cape that he can press a button and it turns into a glider. It's always a lot of fun. But I'm sure I'll think of a way cooler one after I'm finished recording this. Lucas Green again. Is Spidey's better arch nemesis Venom or Green Goblin? I mean, the cop-out answer is they're hard to compare. They're kind of, you know, enemies for different reasons. I guess I'm going to have to say Green Goblin just because Venom's motivations for hating Spider-Man I've always thought were really silly, and I'm waiting for someone to make that more interesting as far as Eddie Brock goes. And Green Goblin is, yes, just a crazy person, but his psychology that gets him there is often pretty interesting. So I'm going to say Green Goblin. And also Green Goblin is more interesting in comparing to Spider-Man, because I guess I would make the case that Venom is comparable to Spider-Man only in that the symbiote is inspired by Spider-Man to look the way it does and have webbing and be kind of the you know, antithesis to Spider-Man and responsibility, right? But most of Spider-Man's villains are the antithesis to the responsibility idea, and that's why Spider-Man needs to take them down, and that's usually the lesson of the story, right? With Eddie Brock, he's supposed to be the anti-Peter Parker also, and that he's also an irresponsible journalist and all of that, but that just always felt too easy and kind of forced to me. And Green Goblin is the opposite in circumstance, and he's like the evil Uncle Ben in a lot of ways. And so I think even in how he's parallel to Spider-Man, he's more interesting. Let's do one more, shall we? Tanner P., where do you suggest someone wanting to get into Star Trek start? This is a question I've answered before, but I'll happily do it again if you haven't heard me talk about this. And I don't know, maybe I'll give a totally different answer. I don't immediately know what I said last time, but this is what I tend to say to people that ask me this. So we did a video years ago that gives a list of different episodes from different shows, depending on what your interests are, that are good starting places for Star Trek. That was an old Trexperts back when Sarah and I were doing that show, and I recommend you go check that video out. I still stand by those selections. For my money, the best place universally to start with Star Trek is TNG Season 3. And I recently did this with Eric, and it worked. I mean, he kind of fell in love with Star Trek, and I don't think he would have if he'd started with 1, because it's such a slow start, and those characters don't, and those actors don't have any sense of what they are yet. It takes a long time to find its footing. But it also so Season 3 is beginning to get to the purest form of what that show is, but then you get to see it still kind of fully come into its own, and I think you'd probably appreciate that a little bit more if you watch through 3 rather than starting with 4, especially just because there's so much stuff in 4 that follows up from stuff from 3. And in fact, there's even a couple of sequels to things in 3 that you won't be lost on, but would appreciate more if you saw the episodes in 2. So when I had Eric start, I gave him 4 or 5 episodes that he should start with 2 before he went to 3. But I think that just the storytelling gets more thoughtful, and the reins get a little bit looser, so that a little bit. I mean, that was the season that Melinda Snodgrass left the show because she still felt like it was way too way too stringent, way too strict on character conflict and not allowing actual interpersonal conflict in that show, and that starts to wane and not be as much of a problem as the show continues past 3. But that's what I would say universally. If you really want to see some great like ongoing serialized storytelling, and you want something a little bit meatier from the outset, start with DS9. And there are a lot of people that are big DS9 fans that don't care about anything else in Star Trek. So if you want I mean, soap opera is kind of a bad word, but like if you want something, in the best way possible, real dramatic, mostly in one location show about a lot of people that change and grow and evolve a lot over time, you want to start with DS9. And I always suggest that you begin with season 2 or watch the last couple episodes of 1, because at least the final episode of 1 is very tied to if memory serves, to 2. And it's really good, but most of the rest of that first season, I think, is kind of throwaway and kind of more TNG on a space station, more early TNG on a space station. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents there. Everybody, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks so very much for watching. Really, really appreciate it. And once again, Danny's doing a great job for us. We really appreciate him. Danny, thanks a bunch for tossing me the questions. It makes my job a whole lot easier, and I'm sure I'm able to answer more things that way than constantly having to surf through the feed. So what else is going on this week? I'm going to be posting the second part of the Omnibus probably tomorrow, so look forward to that. And then if you don't watch the Omnibus and you like the separate the separate excerpts, the segments, you can check those out as I post them, and I do that over a couple of weeks. Some people have been asking me to stop posting those because they just don't like that it looks like the channel has videos with so few views. But I feel the need to do that because if we post just the Omnibus, because yeah, like I put in the timestamps so you can find everything in the Omnibus, but there's a lot of stuff we post that people would never know about if I didn't post the separate videos, and that's why I do that. So if I don't post Vault separately, people might not know that we did Supreme Power, and they might click on it just because it's there. And for the most part, the videos that people really care about, they get hit pretty close to the way they used to, maybe a little bit less, but pretty close. And so usually if you see a video that's only got like 100, 200 views, it's because not very many people are watching that inside the Omnibus either. And it's just something we wanted to talk about for the few people that are interested in it. So that's why we're doing that. And I am working on Age of Ultron, and I will get that out as soon as humanly possible. Of course, I got a brand new episode of Superhero Rewind I posted yesterday. That is the first season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, so check that out if you haven't yet and you have any interest in that. Superhero Rewind is now available in podcast form, as I announced last week. It's on Podbean, and it's on iTunes and any place where you might like to listen to a podcast. I'm posting all of the old episodes as audio-only podcasts as well, and I'm trying to post an average of one of those a day. So about half a year we'll have all of those posted, and you can go back and listen to them that way if you prefer the podcast format. And anybody that does that, we ask you if it's at all possible, and I understand if it's not, but if it's at all possible, please consider donating to Patreon, becoming a patron on Geeklution Patreon, because I have to, of course, pay for podcast hosting now, which is the reason I didn't make it a podcast for the longest time, and those are not monetized. We're not able to generate any kind of revenue through the podcast, and we're doing that just because folks have asked for it, and hopefully to maybe gain a little bit more exposure that way for folks that listen to podcasts and don't look at YouTube as much. But the rewinds have gotten so long, they're basically a podcast now anyway, and it seemed like a pretty justified thing to do now, considering how long they've gotten and considering that now we're not posting them with stills, so they're basically just a glorified podcast anyway. Consider helping us out, especially if you listen to it that way. We would really, really appreciate it. We've got a lot of really cool perks at Patreon, a lot of cool new things going on over there, and at every $50, I review, I make the very next rewind, a big movie or a movie that's been requested a lot. So the next one's going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. We're getting closer and closer. So jump over to Patreon if you have any interest at all, and check that out, and consider helping us out, and we make it as fun as we can for you and try to make it worth your while. Anything else I need to mention? I think that's about everything. So right after I get finished here, I'm going to post the next old posting for Rewind, which is to the channel. I'm doing one of those a week with new art that's audio only, and that's going to be Batman Begins. So that posts today, and I've still got an art competition up on Facebook. If you go check that out, if you have any interest in doing some digital art for us and being a guest artist on one of the on the repostings for Rewind, and I'm going to post a new set of movies to be drawn for that soon, because I've almost got everything I was looking for. So anyway, I think that's all the news that's fit to print for right now. Also, last thing is I've got a new, just lots of stuff going on right now. I've got a new commentary coming up probably Friday for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. With me and the Tretnado guys. So all that and more coming up soon. Thanks so much for watching. We sure appreciate it. We'll see you again very shortly, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. You guys are wonderful. Thanks a bunch, everybody, and thanks for watching this if you did that after the fact. I'm Captain Logan, and I'll see you again soon.